Americans are riled up these days. Immigration, the oil spill in the Gulf, whatever the case, some voters have already taken out their anger on incumbents. Here to talk about those issues and others with us this morning is Georgia Republican Congressman Tom Price from District 6. Congressman, thank you so much for getting up with us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Let's start with a program that your party has launched to get more feedback from constituents. It's AmericaSpeakingOut.com. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for us to have a conversation directly with the American people so that they can go to AmericaSpeakingOut.com, tell us the issues that they're most concerned about. They're able to prioritize the issues and have a conversation back and forth so that we know that we're listening and also representing actively those folks all across this land.
Is it already launched? Can they already?
It is indeed, yes. And we're having great contact from folks all across the country who are excited about the opportunity to directly speak with their members of Congress and folks in charge. Now,
I understand that some Democrats have an issue with the funding for this program. What do you say to that?
Well, it's always interesting to have anybody complain about talking to your constituents. I think that's probably what we ought to be doing more of. I think one of the things that has angered the American people so much is that they don't believe that their leaders are listening to them and their concerns. And so anything we can do to be able to have a greater amount of input from our constituents, from the people across this great country, I'm all in favor of it.
All right. Let's move to the oil slick. Speaking of anger, people are upset about what's happening to the livelihoods, to the beaches. What's your take? Do you think that BP is doing enough right now?
Well, I join all of those who are angered and frustrated and irritated about the lack of leadership. At this time, it seems to be more important for me, I believe, to be able to have everybody come together and pull in the same direction. We ought to solve this problem. We're nearly 7 weeks into this challenge right now, and still have yet to solve it. The last thing we need to be doing is figuring out who to sue, which seems to be what this administration is more concerned about.
BP is about to spend, I think, $50 million on basically a public relations campaign to say they're sorry. Do you think that's a good use of BP money?
Well, listen, it's important that they communicate also with the American people and let them know that they're doing all they can. But the bigger issue is whether or not the leadership, both at the state and the federal level, as well as the corporate level, as well as the oil industry, are working together and moving in the same direction. There is, I think, a good argument can be made that would say the reason that we're in deep water right now is because we're unable to utilize responsibly the resources either onshore or other kinds of technology. There was another oil spill just the other day in Pennsylvania, I believe. You didn't hear about it because it was capped within a matter of hours because it was on land. When we're a mile deep in the ocean, this is all new territory that they're forging right now. It's a very difficult challenge.
Well, what do you think the president or the federal government should be doing differently?
Well, we ought to be working together. Instead of spitting at one another and shouting at one another, we ought to be working together. Solve this challenge. This is major. This is huge, destroying significant areas of the Gulf. There isn't any reason that we ought to be shooting at each other right now. We ought to be pulling together, solving the problem. After that, figure out what happened, why it happened, who's to blame, and move on from there.
All right, let's move on to Arizona's immigration law. How do you feel about that? And do you think that some people are concerned that it'll be judged unconstitutional? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think my sense and understanding in reading Arizona's law, because I have read it, is that it is a restatement of federal law. And so it's frustrating that the states have to get the attention of the federal government and get the federal government to do their job. The fact of the matter is we're in this situation because over the last 24 years, the federal government hasn't done its job and hasn't secured and controlled the border. That's the first thing that has to happen, and that's all that Arizona's saying.
All right. And just very, very quickly, it has been a tough year so far for incumbents. Your reaction to that, and I guess your new website, you feel, will stem the tide of incumbents losing their jobs, perhaps?
Well, I think it's been a tough year for incumbents because people across this country don't feel that their representatives are listening to them. They believe they're representing their leadership and not their constituents. So I'm all in favor of the constituents standing up and saying we want members of Congress who will represent us, not represent our leadership. That's what it's all about.
Congressman Tom Price, again, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Jill.